Testing, 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 testing. All right, everybody, welcome to the WDCR SCCA.org iRacing series, also brought to you by virtualmars.com, which is our new website that has all of the great information about this event. This is our first week 1 in this new series, which will be let's see. Here's my schedule. It's going to be a 10-week series, taking a break the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's. But this is sort of a tour around the common tracks in the WDCR region. And we have a few in there that aren't so common, like Mid-Ohio. We don't race there too often, or Indianapolis. But they are tracks that some of our folks are familiar with. They have raced on them. Interesting, this year we're doing a mix of cars and classes. So in these primary races, you'll be seeing MX-5s, Volkswagen TDIs, and Mustangs. So we sort of have everything from your traditional bumblebee sounding Miata, which is a very common car in the WDCR Club Racing Series, the real racing series that takes place between the spring and the fall. We're in our off season now, so we've moved to virtual racing. And the MX-5 Miata, or just Miatas in general, not just MX-5s. MX-5s are the current Pro Cup car, but Miatas of many different eras are raced all throughout the series, as well as all kinds of other cars, from Pintos to Mustangs to Honda Civics. We race a variety of things. We're also going to be doing 3 weeks that are Spec Racer Ford Racing, which is our closed wheel, open wheel car. So it's an interesting car. It's really designed to be driven like an open wheel car is. Those are like your Indy cars, those types, the cars without fenders. But what makes the SRF different is it was designed by SCCA, and it does have fenders. It does, so it's kind of like in this weird category of drives like an open wheel car, but it's technically has fenders, so I guess it's not. I don't know. I don't drive one, but I know they're cool to watch. I know everybody that's driven one talks about how amazingly awesome they are to drive. So this will be a very interesting race today, since we have a mix. Of course, just like in real racing, we're only going to have people finish and qualify based on the group that they're in. So really, the Miatas are competing against the Miatas, the Mustangs are competing against the Mustangs, and the Volkswagens are competing against the Volkswagens. So this is called mixed class racing. This is something that you'll see. It's very common in real club racing. And what it does is it gives you a larger field of cars, even though they're not technically competing against one another. And kind of the hope of mixed class racing is that the cars will likely pack up as they go around the track into their own classes. Of course, that all depends on the skill level of the drivers, and sometimes, especially in a large group like Miata, of which we have a bunch today. It looks like we have 29 cars overall. Yep, that's what I'm seeing, 29 cars. And it looks like 3 of them are Volkswagens, 3 of them are Mustangs, and all the rest are Miatas. So if I do my math, that's 23 Miatas. So what you'll see with such a large group is varying skill levels of drivers will lead to a much broader pack. Your faster cars are going to pack up and kind of be in their own pack, and your slowest cars will be in the back. So these classes tend to mix more, especially in a longer race like this. This will be a 72-minute race. So that's about 2.5 times longer than our normal race. It's about 2.5 times longer than our typical races in the real world and in the virtual world. We typically do those for about 30 minutes. So this will be interesting. I will like to know if any of these Miatas are going to run out of fuel, because they might have forgotten to check their tanks and prep their fuel for a 72-minute race instead of a 30-minute race. Some non-racers out there may be asking, what does it matter? Why wouldn't you just fill the car up, right? You're going to go race, put a full tank in. Well, gas is weight, and every little bit of advantage can matter in racing, especially if you're at the front of the pack. So drivers typically tend to only put as much fuel in a car as they need to do the laps they need to do to finish the race. So if you know you're going to have a 20-lap race, you have 20 laps of gas in the car, plus maybe a half a gallon to a gallon as spare, and that's about it. So if you left your car set up for a 30-minute race, you're going to run out of gas at about 31 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see if we have anybody pulling off around that time. As you see here, in a Mars event, live and in virtual, we do what's called a rolling start. This is where the cars start not from a standstill, but they take a lap with a pace car, where the pace car takes all the cars around the track. And in this case, it looks like, yes. So the pace car takes the cars around the track. The cars sort of get a chance to warm up their tires, warm up their brakes. And starting from a rolling start like this actually is significantly safer than starting from a standing start, which is why SCCA switched to this type of start a long time ago. And until the checker flag comes out, the front leading car is required to maintain the pace once the pace car pulls off. There's the green flag, and there goes the big bore Mustangs. Those engines are roaring. A relatively clean turn 1 there for our big bores, and it looked like everybody else behind them. Sort of a nice, smooth, rather uneventful first turn, which is honestly what we like to see. We don't want a lot of chaos. There's no fun people wrecking out on the first turn. You know, there's an old saying in racing, you can't win on the first lap, but you can lose on the first lap. And as we pop back a couple spots, here's our Miata leader, Carter Whedon, in the number 22. Carter had a really good season this year in the Legends car in the Mars series. And we have our awards banquet coming up in November, so it'll be nice to see Carter there again, just sort of say hi. Here's Louis Alessi, who is 2 cars in front of Carter. and the much quieter Volkswagen GTI with this nice little Hot Wheels logo going there on the front of the car. And I would like to correct and say that we actually have 4 cars that are Mustangs. So position 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the track are our Mustangs. 5 and 6 are Volkswagens. Number 7 is the first Miata, who just became number 6. That's Carter Whedon right there, getting in front of that GTI behind our GTI leader right here, number 43. We are looking at those Mustangs. I'll try to give you some different views this race. It can be a little, well, that was a little laggy. It can be a little difficult sometimes when the cars spread out like this to give you a good view of multiple cars. But, ooh, almost putting 2 off there in the Mustang. But I think we'll give you some good shots tonight. This is what it's like coming into turn 1 at probably about 140 miles an hour. It's the front end of that Mustang. I can't say I've raced too many Mustangs to tell you how accurate this sound is. But I do know for sure that the sound in the Miatas is very much what a Miata sounds like. That bumblebee noise as they whiz on by. Here we're looking at Carter again, who's our lead for the Miatas, right behind Louis Alessi. And between Lewis and our next GTI, we actually have 2 Miatas now, Carter Whedon and Brian Carwan. Like I said, very good turnout tonight. I recognize a lot of names from the WDCR Road Racing Series, Club Racing, which is Mars, Mid-Atlantic Road Racing Series. So we called this one the Virtual Mars because we kind of want to keep the theme going. So a lot of our real Mars racers have a lot of experience on this track. Like here's second place in our Mustangs is Michael Monahan, who's got quite a bit of experience, and right on his tail is Eric Jones, who's also raced quite a bit with us. Eric, also a Legends driver. I believe Michael Monahan is a Miata driver. I hope that's true because he's probably be mad at me if it's not. And Forrest Landy is our leader in the Mustangs with a current track lap of 1:18.633. So that's actually pretty quick, but the interesting thing about Summit Point is it's a very technical course. It's 10 turns over 2.2 miles. And while these Mustangs, let's see if we can get a readout on his speed. While these Mustangs obviously have the horsepower advantage, and there is quite a long straightaway, as you see here, where they can get up to some good speed, they really suffer in the turns on this track because they are quite tight and it's very technical. So you really have a car that's kind of like a stand on it and go kind of car, and you're constantly having to brake and turn, which bleeds a lot of that horsepower advantage away. As we can see as we go to Carter Whedon here, who in a Miata is turning a 1:21.29. So he's only about 3 seconds behind the leader on the pace, and he's probably got a quarter of the horsepower. And part of the reason why this is because these Miatas, while they don't have that step on it and go fast power, they can maintain a lot more speed in these turns. So they're not having to brake as much to navigate these corners, and they're just able to keep a relative higher speed around the track. Not overall higher than the Mustangs, but it's a lot closer than it would be on a much straighter track where the Mustangs are just sort of blowing it out of the water as they just get to gun it from corner to corner. Here they don't really have that opportunity quite as much. I also suspect as these drivers warm up and get a little more comfortable with the track, we're probably going to see a little bit more of those Mustangs pulling away from those Miatas. Here's Lewis in his Volkswagen. Getting passed by another Miata. That's Brian Carwan again. It is nice to see the skins that these guys come up with, how they decorate their cars, what they choose to put on there as sponsors. So let's go down the list. Here we have Forrest Landy, who is currently in first in a Mustang. Michael Monahan, second. Eric Jones, who's in third. Scott Luttrell in fourth. Carter Whedon in fifth. Louis Alessi in sixth, and having made up a good amount of time is Dave Fitzgerald in seventh. If we look, I mean, there's still a bit of a distance there between Lewis and Dave, but Dave's definitely made up a little bit of time there. The time between these two cars is only about 0.2 of a second per lap. So even though it looks like quite a big gap, they're really very close on the lap times. In 8th place, we got Jeff Jacobs in a Miata. It's Ken Huzel in the number 20 Miata. Paul Darling in 10th place. UMBC, huh? All right. I'm University of Maryland myself. Here's Kevin Fireline. Hope I said that right. We got some new folks, so I'm probably going to butcher some of these names. Sam Scott. Also in a UMBC car. Did I get that right? Yep, Paul Darling and Sam Scott, both in UMBC cars. Here's Brian Carwan. If I remember correctly, was a little bit higher up, so he must have had a problem. Travis Trussell. Travis is very involved with our Performance Driving Experience program, which is where you can bring any car and a helmet and come on out and drive on a track. If you've never done it before, we've got instructors. They'll sit with you. They'll teach you how to drive fast, safe, but fun and fast type of driving. Here's our other TDI, James Saffel, in 15th place. Mark Wood in 16th. Noel Leslie in 17th. And then number 91. Very popular car, as a matter of fact. Mr. Fitzgerald tends to run number 91. At least in the real world, he races Dave Fitzgerald races a BMW number 91. Here is Usama Tala. Probably said that wrong, but I hope I was close. Number 23 Miata. Louis Gaviano. Got proudly displaying his Virginia's logo across the hood. Here's Ray Phillips, 20th place. Zachary Rubin. Alan Claffey. Ray Hagan. Number 24, CB Bronlich. Now that's quite an interesting car design. Looks like he found every sticker he could and stuck it to his car. Obviously that's how the skin is, but that's just kind of what it looks like. I like interesting skins. Danny Cow in the Suave for Men car. Jonathan Boble. Tim Bradford, who looks like he's recovering from a bit of an accident, getting that car repaired in the pits. Luckily, it's virtual, so they're fixing stuff. And here's Jordan Eichelbaum, who's also sitting in the pits. You'll notice there off to the left, give you a better view of those crews. Off to the left, you have a bunch of crews over there. iRacing is bringing pit crews into racing. So what you're going to see happen is eventually, like as this work is being done to this car, you see it's being lifted, tires are being fixed, body parts are being done. What you're going to see happen eventually is the crews will actually come out and do that. So they're adding even more to the simulation to give you a that full racing experience. So our top 4 are still our Mustangs. We have not had much of a change. Forrest Landy, there's no R, is still out in the lead. As you can see, we run a leaderboard across the top to make it easy for you to reference sort of like who's where and what's going on. Mind, this is a long race. So with 60 minutes to go, there is a lot of things that can happen. So it's hard to count any sort of like what does being in front mean at this point. There's even racing strategies to purposely not be out in front and to kind of stay back and race. You don't want to fall too far back, but you don't want to be the leader until a certain point in the race. And some of this has to come with driver fatigue and mental acuity. I mean, speaking for somebody, oh, by the way, I didn't really introduce myself. I'm Michael Group. I'm number 68. I traditionally race a Spec RX-7. That's a Mazda rotary engine car in the actual Mars Racing. I would be racing here, but I'm the only guy who is smart enough to volunteer to talk all the time. But that's okay. I like to talk, so this gives me an opportunity to do it where nobody interrupts me for, at this point, it's going to be 72 minutes today. So, but yeah, so I'm an actual racer in the Washington, D.C. region Mars Series, again, as a lot of these folks are. And everybody in here is a Washington, D.C. region member or a family member or associate of a Washington, D.C. region member or something. So they're all connected to our club. There's probably a couple honorary members in here, people from other regions that I don't know if you have to be. I will check our new website. That's virtualmars.com. I think the requirements, I don't think you have to be a Washington, D.C. region member. I think the requirement is you just have to be a SCCA member. So it's honestly, we will probably allow anybody to race with us. You want to race with us, talk to us. I don't think there's much heartburn there, but this really is about giving our members something back, giving them an opportunity to get out there and do the sport that they love in the off season. Because most of these guys, they love racing so much, they just can't seem to get enough of it. There's Carter Whedon, who looks like he's about to get past, but either that or he was the one doing the passing. We're going to have to pop in to see what that was. Yeah, that was Carter Whedon overtaking, I assume, was Jeff Jacobs. Yeah, that's Jeff Jacobs. You can hear that nice bumblebee roar of that Miata engine. Sort of sounds like we're hearing something from this car, but I don't know. If you're wondering what I'm doing, it sounds like he's got a bit of a tire problem, but the tires look okay to me. Yeah, maybe I'm just hearing things. Here's a look down the main straight. We'll take a lap in a car. I can't think of much better cars to take a lap in than Carter Wheaton. He knows this track backwards and forwards. One of our younger racers, I know Carter Wheaton's kind of like in his early 20s, but boy, does he love to race. He has 2 Legends cars that I know of. One set up for oval racing and one set up for track racing, because you really do need to set the cars up differently. You know, oval, you're only making a bunch of left turns. Whereas in track, you have to be ready for all kinds of different things. And every track's a little bit different. You know, in Summit Point, the front left tire takes quite of a beating, especially right there in turn 5. It's really kind of rough on the car because it's a very, very hard left turn. Here's the Carousel, where it's sort of like an inside, outside, inside type thing. And you really treat a lot of this part of the track from turn 5 all the way to here, which is turn 9. It's really all kind of seen as one long turn. You're just kind of maneuvering the car through that carousel. You're not using a lot of brake. Hopefully you're not using any brake, really depending on the car. I mean, a Mustang probably has to, but a Miata probably doesn't. You're just staying on that accelerator, and you're just gracefully maneuvering that car through those turns. So you'd be going as fast as possible when you come into turn 9 onto the short straight. This is the long straight, and this is the very hard brake going into turn 1. And as you can see, Carter is keeping a pretty good pace with that Mustang out in front of him. And when we look at the lap times, they are only about 0.19 hundredths of a second apart. So a little less than 0.2 of a second. As far as their fastest laps go. Ooh, that was a little sketchy there. Carter held on to it. So you can see a lot of racing isn't necessarily about just knowing the track. It's also knowing where to pass. Like there. Beautiful pass. It's knowing where to pass, and it's being able to deal with the car in unexpected situations. I mean, that car is going to act up at times. You're going to be going into a corner, and your rear end's going to start to slide, or all 4 tires are going to start to slide. And really, you have to sort of be prepared for those eventualities and know how to handle the car and manipulate the car to keep it on the track and stay safe. You know, I mean, racing really is a no-contact sport. Sometimes there's a little bit of love taps here and there, but this is not a bang and drive type of sport. You need to be able to maintain control of the vehicle. You need to be safe. And iRacing, for example, is very unforgiving. I think probably more unforgiving than the real world as far as vehicle contact. More often than not, when I see vehicle contact in iRacing, one or both drivers is going off and into a wall. And I don't know if it's a matter of the car physics here are different enough. I know iRacing puts an immense amount of effort into making the car physics as realistic as possible, as well as the track. These are laser scanned tracks, the track texture, a lot of those things are taken into consideration when they build the track. So I don't know if it's that, or as a driver, it's harder to react to a virtual car losing control than a real car. Because, you know, some of the folks here have very fancy racing rigs with seats and multiple monitors or virtual reality helmets and force feedback wheels and all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're simulating an event and simulating motion as opposed to actually feeling it. Having sort of like that extra sense of that, or what we call butt feel, of being able to feel what the car is doing, the G-forces on your body. If you pick up these extra senses, like knowing when a turn is too much because of how much it's pulling you into the seat, and going, I know my car is going to break loose now because this is more than me and the car are used to. And a lot of that is almost subconscious. I could talk about different elements of racing for forever and ever and ever, but here we have Forrest Landry, who is lapping the back of the pack, still in our first place, still running about a 119. Oh, there we had a little bit of contact. Hard to say whose fault that was. I mean, Forrest was making the pass. Was he fully made the pass? It was a tough angle to see. That's just something that, I don't really know who was at fault there from the angle we had. I think that goes to demonstrate how hard it is being a volunteer flagger or one of our stewards, which are sort of like our judges. Judge is the wrong word, but they're the rules enforcers. They're the event coordinators. They're everything, right? That's how quick something happens in racing, right? Contact is made, somebody spins off. Whose fault was it? Who was involved in the incident? And honestly, a lot of times, a lot of that is figured out after the race. It's just called in that car 4 and car whatever had contact, and then it all has to be worked out after the fact, because it's too hard in the heat of the moment to really figure that out. Here we have Carter, but I think he's in 5th place. I'm trying to figure out who's in front of him. It's probably Sam Scott. Nope, Sam's behind him. Man, it's definitely a Miata, number 39. Probably, I guess at this point, yeah, that's Alan Clayfie. So that's a lap car. Alan's in 18th place. So Carter, much like the Mustangs, is lapping some of the folks out there right now. There's Michael Monahan with what now looks like a Miata on his tail. Yeah, Eric Jones has fallen a little bit back. Well, again, so there's some space between him and Eric, but I believe that Miata is a lap car, so it's somebody that they've passed. If we can get a number read here, we can tell you better, but there's a little bit of a distance there, so it's going to be hard to say. This is where things get interesting in mixed class racing. iRacing doesn't have the same rules we have in real racing for numbers. Some of these guys, their numbers are okay, but really you want big contrasting numbers on your car so we can see exactly who's who, where they are, what they're doing, what's going on. This camera isn't super helpful either. Here's Eric Jones, currently in 3rd place. I'm not ignoring you folks. I'm just letting you enjoy some of the race. I'm also doing a quick check to make sure our stream is still up. And it is. One of the nice things about having a phone is I can check on there and make sure that everything's still working. If I can see the stream from my phone, you can see the stream from whatever device you're on. I don't think Facebook allows us to stream a live YouTube video to Facebook anymore. We were able to do that early last year, and I think Facebook dropped that ability. They really want us to stream to Facebook. There's complications with that. Facebook cuts the quality pretty significantly when I stream to Facebook, whereas if you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch this up to 720p 60, maybe in the last 6 months. The 60 frames per second, which, you know, for those of you that care. Maybe in the last 6 months since we've kind of done this, maybe Facebook has changed some of that, maybe their streaming quality has increased, but we definitely find we get the best quality on YouTube. We stream to YouTube, YouTube captures and stores this, it's searchable, it's easy to get to, that type of stuff. So, if you're coming at this from Facebook, that could be the reason that you have to click a link and go watch. See if I have anybody chatting over here in the live chat. We have 13 viewers currently watching live on YouTube. Of course, that's going to vary depending on if I'm getting live streaming to Facebook, is it counting those numbers and all that other stuff. But we do this for you, we do this for our members, we really want people to come out and have a good time. If you're interested about these races and want to learn more, I'll go over the schedule in a minute, but you can always go to virtualmars.com. You'll see it up there in the top right. Also, you can go to WDCR SCCA.org. We will be unveiling a new website in the next month or so. It's going to be completely redesigned from the ground up. It's going to be much more user-friendly, much more interactive, much more intuitive. We're going to have some videos. We're going to have pictures, calendars, and just all kinds of stuff to really make a better user experience for everybody, whether you're a member or you're looking to join racing. Here's Michael Monahan pulling into the pits. I don't know why, unless these guys need to get gas, which is entirely possible. No, it looks like, yeah, he's pulling in. I don't think this is going to give me any information as to why he's pulling into the pits. Looks like they're doing tires now, so it's got to be tires and fuel. Maybe that's a planned event part of this. Let's take a look at our TDIs for a little bit. We've got Dave Fitzgerald, and right behind him is Louis Alessi. This might be... it really is kind of amazing how quiet these cars are. I almost feel like I'm yelling at you now. Because they are just so much quieter than either a Miata or a Mustang. Oh, Michael Whedon, who I assume is, well, obviously related to Carter Whedon. I think it's his father. He said Carter is 17. Wow, mind blown. So, he's definitely mature for his age. I always thought, I've known Carter, I think, probably now 2 years, maybe 3. At least 2. I know at least 2 seasons. And he's one of the nicest kids you're going to meet. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a heck of a racer. Like I said, he's got quite the process going with multiple cars and a trailer, and I mean, a lot of folks take this very seriously, and Carter's one of them. So, and there's Mr. Ed Howard saying hello. He and Dave Fitzgerald race together. They actually share a car. So there's an idea for folks who are interested in getting into racing. you can buy one car and drive it in different events. And that's what Mr. Howard and Mr. Fitzgerald do. And one of them drives in STU and the other drives in ITS, which are different classes that race at different times. And they split the costs, right? One car split the costs, two drivers. So it's an interesting way to do things. You obviously can't do that with every car, but you could do it with a lot of them, especially if you're not worried about being too competitive in one of those two classes. We have a lot of Miatas that double dip in other classes just so they can get more track time. Some of them are racing in those classes for points to try to win trophies. Others are just racing to get track time and don't really care about the position that they finish in because they know they're not competitive. Their car's not set up for it. It's not their main class, but they get to go out there. You pay a discounted fee for your second race for the same driver, and you get more track time. So Dave and Lewis are still kind of right on top of one another. We still see Lewis chasing Dave. Lewis still with the fastest lap time between the two of them, with a 1:21.775. Dave has a 1:21.995. So, 22 hundredths of a second. But Dave has been consistently running slightly faster lap times. They're really running at about the 1:22.6s now. So while 1:21.7 may have been Lewis's fastest time, he's really running at about a 1:22.6 now. So, and thanks everybody for saying hi in the stream chat. I hope you can hear us good. I hope the stream is working well. Make sure you type to me if there's anything going on with the stream, if it stops or if it stalls or whatever. I'll try to keep an eye on it on my end. As a matter of fact, this is a good time to run my phone again. I'll just make sure I kill the volume so I can keep the stream up and running so I know if there's any problems. Because believe it or not, when you're running a stream like this, it's not always apparent if your stream shuts off. So it's always good to have a source running that lets me know if we're having any troubles or issues. Let's go ahead and take a look at Carter. Still leading the pack. We got Sam Scott behind him. Looks like Sam is a good bit behind Carter. He's just coming through turn 10 now, and Carter is breaking into turn 1. So Carter again running very consistent. His lap times are right around 1:22 even. His fastest lap time being a 1:21.290. So he's being very consistent in his times. Sam Scott, who's chasing him, is actually pulled a little bit faster lap time in that last lap. He pulled a 1:21.95. So, if he continues to do that, he's going to catch up to Carter, especially in a race where we still have 37 minutes to go. But it's a matter of consistency, right? If Carter always pulls 1:22s and Sam is pulling some 1:21s and 1:23s, it's much harder to catch up. Yeah, one of our comments is about that you can see the workers' camps, the RVs, and that type of stuff off in the distance. You see on the right here as we go through pit lane, those tents in the pit lane are new because that's where the pit crews are who are coming in. But as we go around the track, we'll do our braking maneuver into 1. That's a big gravel pit there, by the way, in case you ever lose your brakes. Like, let's say you're driving a 1985 Mazda RX-7 and your brakes just stop working. That's what gravel pits are for. Not that it's not happened once, folks. It's only happened about 3 times. But that's racing. You deal with it. And eventually, like myself, you replace your entire brake system, lines and everything, and it doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, over there, as we come into the carousel, now exiting turn 5, you can see people parked off on the left. And up here, you see the RVs and the spectators in the stands. I mean, this really is what it looks like at Summit Point. And it's pretty awesome to have this level of detail where they've got the grandstands in the right position. They've got the RVs. They've got people standing out in the crowds, camping, having a good time. And a lot of people that come to the races, that's what they come for. They come to spectate and come to have a good time. Not a very good turn 10 there from Carter. He was very wide in his turn. It was kind of, you know, I mean, he's in the lead, but it was a little sloppy. Checking out some of our other racers, see what Eric Jones is doing. He's currently, it looks like about 15 seconds behind our leader. Michael Monahan, who's only 1.3 seconds behind our leader. So I think this is going to get a little bit more competitive between Forrest and Michael as we continue this race. Michael's not letting Forrest run away with it. And that's going to probably, as a gap, as time goes on, I expect it might shrink. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Carter's got a respectable lead in his position. And now we've had some changes in our VW race. We have Louis Alessi in 7th. And he's quite a bit in front of James Saffel. It's hard to tell because at some point it just says that they're a lap behind. I don't know how much of a lap behind they are because it's really just, it's not off of the car in front of them, it's off of the leader. So my gap information's a little complicated. We have 8 people who it looks like are currently either in the pits or out of the race completely. So the field is shrinking as we go on. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen in real racing, but this is a pretty high ratio of people who we've lost. But again, in iRacing, you can run the car into a wall and it doesn't cost you a dime, so why not be a little risky? Dave is not far behind James. It looks like James just overtook Lewis. Oh, Lewis is pulled in. Interesting. Again, with this long of a race, it's quite possible that these cars have to pull in, that they need to get gas and tires. If that's the case, then I think what Lewis is doing is smart. He's getting that work done now, and if it lasts till the end of the race, I mean, we're 72-minute race, so we're over the halfway point now. So he'll probably be able to continue for the rest of the race on these tires and this gas. Glad you guys are liking the stream out there. Give you a minute. We're gonna bounce around, see some folks doing some racing. Some of our more closer races. And here's the number 91 car, Noel Leslie, who it looks like was trying to make a little bit of a move on Usama Taha in the number 23, but backed off coming out of turn 1. Now you'll notice Usama right there put 2 tires off in the gravel on the right. That, in the last year, has become a big no-no in the actual Mars Racing Series, the road racing. And part of that is because simply almost administrative reasons. As you go through the gravel in turn 3, or actually it's the exit of turn 3, it kicks a lot of that gravel onto the track. And while these road cars don't really care, it's a big problem for open wheel cars. And if enough gravel gets on the track, everybody cares because it can create a very hazardous condition. So they actually banned it now. You're not allowed to put tires off into that gravel. And if you do, you can be penalized. You can lose times, you can lose laps, you can lose positions, finish first, but you put 2 off in the gravel, maybe you finish 4th. I don't know. That's kind of up to the stewards, but I do know they were very serious about it, and I believe they cut it down significantly. And you say, well, what's the big deal? You get some gravel, you go out there, you sweep it down. The problem was, is we were cleaning the tracks after every race. It was pretty consistent. And some people were actually going way off into the gravel, almost thinking that that's a faster race line, which, whether it is or it isn't, it's not what the track is designed for. You really shouldn't be going off the track to drive. That's not the intent. So, it's faster to skip turn 5, 6, 7, and 8 and just shoot through the grass, but obviously, that's wrong, so you don't do that. So why would you shoot through the gravel? That was kind of the logic behind it. So it's fine here in iRacing, but just know if you go to a real racing event, our drivers are much cleaner around that corner because they don't want to get a penalty. Here we have Usama Taha, 14th position. Missing a shift, I think, maybe? Or just deciding not to shift there for 10. Here is Ray Phillips trying to make a move on Travis down the straight. Travis on the inside. Travis going to back out and try to take the turn to not lose too much speed. If Travis would have stayed to the inside, ideally if you're going to take the inside, you want to force the outside car to stay to the outside and bleed speed off of both cars so that you're not giving up too much. If you stay to the inside and you allow the outside car to come in an apex, he's going to come out of that turn way faster than you. He's going to blow you away. So really what you want to do is stay on the inside, force him outside, and as you come out of the turn, you'll kind of be neck and neck coming into turn 2. That's one of the ways to do it. Of course, Travis just sort of backed off, and as you see, he lost a little bit of speed because he did that. Travis, again, one of our PDX drivers. Performance driving experience is non-competitive, so I don't know if Travis has ever done racing, or if he's only ever done PDX, but I know that he has a lot of experience on this track. But again, with PDX being non-competitive, things like going side by side through corners, forcing people to the outside, that's all things you don't do in a PDX. Those things are strictly club racing techniques where it's, you're allowed to pass anywhere and do anything you want. In a PDX, there's certain passing zones. It's during the straights. I think advanced drivers can pass anywhere in a PDX as long as the driver in front points them by, meaning they point the direction they want them to pass and they allow them to take the pass. But again, PDX is not a competitive environment. It's just a fun driving experience. It's the experience you get out there and drive fast and just really kind of see what your car can do. You will see race prep cars and PDXs, but again, that's just people who are trying to get track time. They're just going out there. They're just working on their skills. And we're back in our Volkswagens. Here's Lewis, who's behind Dave, who's behind James. So here's Dave in 10th position overall. Getting passed by Eric Jones, I believe. Yeah, that's him. We have James out in front. Yeah, we've got some space here between our drivers, that's for sure. These Volkswagens are out and well spaced. Really up here in the front, not to give all the love to the Mustangs, but this is definitely a close race up here with Forrest Landry. Michael Monahan is only 0.222 seconds behind Forrest Landry. As you see right there, Michael is practically on his tail. Little bit of a, getting a little squirrely there, Forrest car. I don't know if you guys watching prefer any particular angle. I kind of like this rear chase angle because it allows us to see what's going on. If the guy behind, in this case Michael Monahan, is catching up, falling back. If you want me to do regular race views or the scenic views, you can let me know. You can tell me. I'll focus on what you like. It seems like when I ask this question, I get about as many answers as there are people to give them. So I know some people like overhead views, some people like the sideline views. Oh, there's Forrest's car, man. His rear end really is not got a lot of grip to it. I don't know if his tires are wore out or what's going on. But he's let's see coming in turn 5 what it looks like from Michael Monahan's. No, I held it together pretty good in 5. I know he was slipping a little bit last time coming out of this turn 6. Looks good through 6, 7, and 8. Coming up on 8 right here. Looks good. Coming up at 9. Both cars looking good. So this is the short straight, as we call it, or some call it the bridge straight, because there's the bridge that bridges the outside world with the inside, the paddock. Here we go through 10. Both cars probably could take that a little faster. One of our viewers pointing out PDXs are also great for testing cars, testing parts, testing out new setups. You know, you change the camber of your tires, you change tires, you change brakes. You want to see how does it feel. Am I faster? Am I slower? You know, PDX is an abundance of track time compared to racing. You get significantly more time, and so you get opportunities to test and sort of change the setup of a car multiple times in a day and try it and see how it works. Now we have Michael Monahan. Last lap he was a half a second behind Forrest, but he's obviously made that up. Let's see how they do through 10. Yeah, so I know these are not Miatas, but I definitely think both those cars probably going to be taking that turn faster. As they get closer to each other, their times are picking up. Now both of their fastest laps are at 118.6. 6.33 for Forrest and a 6.65 for Michael. So these guys really are pulling very similar laps. So whoever sort of figures out a little bit faster way around this track really could be our winner today. To give you an update on the Miatas, I mean, you see my scrolly board here, but Carter is in first still. And then we've got Carter, then Paul Darling, then Jeff Jacobs for first, second, and third in the Miata groups. And in the Volkswagen groups, we have James Saffel, Dave Fitzgerald, and Louis Alessi. There they are right there in the scroll. They just scrolled by. These guys really are nose to tail. I wouldn't think Michael would try to make a pass before 10. I mean, anything's possible, but really, here's his opportunity now. Forrest kind of took that sloppy, and Michael might be able to take the inside pass here going into 1. He's going for it. Michael, a club racer, keeping Forrest to the outside, not letting him in. Beautiful pass, beautiful overtake. If there was a textbook, that would be the way you would do it. Absolutely gorgeous. He did everything right. He didn't give Forrest any track room going down the straight. He adjusted his speed to keep Forrest to the outside. Forrest tried to bleed a little more speed off so that he could take the apex and come out of the turn faster, since he'd have more track since he was on the outside. A common tactic, and I do this quite a bit to people that try to dive bomb me in 1, is I'll slow down a bit more in 1 than they do. They shoot in front of me. I take a nice high speed turn with the apex, and then as soon as we come out of the turn, I'm just going faster than they are. I mean, all the physics is in my favor, and my car passes them very shortly after we come out of the turn. And I think that's what Forrest was trying to do, but Michael just kept adjusting, kept Forrest to the outside. Forrest was unable to do that, and when they came out of that turn, Michael just had all the advantage. It really was beautiful. See this shallow turn now that Forrest has to take because that Miata was on the outside. You can see how slow that was. But if you got 2 cars going side by side, they're both just as slow. But if there's somebody who can take the full apex and you got to take that slow of a turn, you're just going to lose every time. So that was very well done by Michael Monahan. Really great racing tradecraft. Or, I'm sorry, racecraft. Not that Forrest has given anything up. Didn't really track out there on the inside of that carousel, but you know, not every lap's going to be perfect, but when you're trying to catch the leader, you need to be as perfect as possible. So you'll notice the car is tracking to the outside of the track, but again, I think they could be going through those turns faster because that car could track out another foot or so without hitting the gravel, which means you could be taking more speed into the turn and allowing the car to just force itself to the outside. And that little bit of speed coming into 10 matters so much going down that straight. I mean, just a couple miles per hour is multiplicative going down that long straight. So yeah, I agree. Ed Howard said this really was a great race for number 1 and number 2. And that's kind of why we're lingering here. We'll take a look real quick. Paul Darling, again, since they're both a lap behind the main leader, it's hard to say how far back they are, but they're obviously well spread out. Take a look real quick at Dave and James again. Well, Dave and James are both on the main straight, so that's good for Dave. He's catching up, and here's Lewis, who's getting passed by our race leaders right now. Michael just passed him, and here's Forrest. Now Forrest's going to want to get back to the outside so he can take his full apex. Here we go. There's the apex. We're tracking out now. Didn't fully track out. What I think happened right there was Forrest is so fixated on Michael's car that as Michael's car started to turn in, he started to turn in, which didn't allow him to fully track out. It's a psychological mechanic that happens where you follow the car in front of you, but you have to remember that you're not on the same line. He's, you know, a couple tenths of a second in front of you. So if you follow him, you're actually coming off the racing line. See here, didn't track all the way out. Yeah, he's fixated on Michael at this point. And the trick is when you get fixated on the guy in front of you, not only are you sort of off the racing line, oh, he's coming in. Probably coming in for tires and gas. Well, this will be interesting. I don't think at this point he probably doesn't have much of a choice. But I don't know if Michael's gotten his tires and gas yet, but if he has, that's going to be tough for Forrest to catch up. Now, if Michael still needs to come in, depending on how many laps he chooses to go, which I imagine if he noticed that Forrest pulled in, if he needs to come in for tires and gas, he's going to do it this lap. Because you don't want to give somebody too many laps on fresh tires and gas when you're running on poor tires and gas, especially when the race is that close, because his times, he has the opportunity just to be that much faster. And the more laps you let him go, the more it's going to hurt you. Now, Michael thinks he can finish the race on the setup he's got, then maybe that's what he'll do. We'll see here if he is going to pull in or not, and then we'll go look at some other racers. Nope, currently he's going to keep going. So, here we have Carter. It looks like Paul's not that far behind Carter. Paul in the 155, currently in 5th place. You know, he's... if I had to guess, maybe 0.7 of a second behind. Well, now I think he's a little bit farther behind than that. It's so hard to judge at 100 miles an hour how far behind a car is from another car. But it is good to see the UMBC racing cars getting out there in front. That, of course, being Baltimore College. There's a lot, if you're not from this area, there's a lot of University of Maryland colleges. Almost a lot of the, I think all of the public universities in University of Maryland are named University of Maryland. And then they're subdivided into different categories. You've got Baltimore College, you have just kind of what they call the main campus. You got College Park, you've got University College, you've got a wide variety of schools that are all affiliated with one another, but yet they're different. It's interesting how Maryland has it set up. They're probably not the only state to do that, but the only state I know of that does that. I'm more used to, I grew up in Arizona, and I see this is very common out west especially, but around the country, is there was University of Arizona and there was Arizona State University. Two different schools, both Arizona, public colleges, but they're, one's University of and the other is just Arizona State. So it's how they differentiate. You can find that in several different places around the country. Dave following James. We got some people out here we haven't spent a lot of time looking at. This is Mark Wood, 17th place, number 41 car. Still going, which is admirable because we have currently, it looks like, 10 drivers who are out of the race. So, there's an old saying that, you know, 80% of racing is of a race is won in a garage, which means if you have a car that's well prepped, well set up, isn't going to break, and is ready to go, that's a good bit of racing, of your ability to win. Because obviously if you break down, you can't win the race. So you'll find quite frequently that people will finish much higher than they started, because they have well prepped cars that are, you know, not breaking down. Now in the more competitive classes, like the Miatas, you may have some guys wreck. You don't have a lot that break down. So it looks like today we had our cars, they started with a 40% fuel load, but they can stop and fuel up. They don't have to take a full tank. They can stop that fill up at any time. I can tell you right now, you know, Forrest has reclaimed the second position. You see he's there in front of Eric. As far as pit time goes, Eric has 9.6 seconds in the pit. Forrest has 39.6 seconds in the pit. So 30 seconds more than Eric, which is quite amazing that these guys are still this close. And Michael Monahan is right in the middle with 18.7 seconds. So I don't really know if that means that they don't need to take any more pits. One pit's enough. If that's the case, why did Forrest stop again for another pit? Did he just feel his tires were burned out and he needed new tires if he was going to catch up to Michael? I don't know. This is the time where it'd be handy if we had in-car radios, or we could listen to pit crews like they do in NASCAR. We could find out why they did what they did, but ultimately we can't. I would encourage all of you, if you are a driver and you watch this race, provide a comment. Let us know if you did something, if we caught it. The wreck we saw earlier between the Miata and the Mustang, if you want to tell your side of the story, if you want to tell me why you spent 39.6 seconds in the pit, feel free to comment on Facebook, comment on YouTube. People will come back. They're going to read these. They're going to look at the videos. The video will continue to get views for some time. We've done this before. We know our trends. People are going to watch this stuff. So if you want to help explain why things happen the way you think they happen, feel free to do it. People will read your comments. So Forrest is currently 17.9 seconds behind our leader, Michael Monahan. Eric, 19.6 seconds behind our leader, so less than 2 seconds behind Forrest. But Forrest is just kind of flying really about 2 seconds a lap faster than Eric. I am showing that all of the Mustangs have made 2 pit stops. So maybe Forrest is taking on more fuel in the pit stops, not knowing if he can cut it off or when to cut it off so much. I mean, Eric's, man, his crew is just on point if he's only got 9.6 seconds in the pits with 2 stops. So he's got the professional crew helping him out. You know, Paul Darling and Carter Whedon, to give you an idea, both these Miatas, Carter spent 31.6 seconds in the pit with 1 stop, so he must have stopped and taken on full fuel, so he only had to stop once. Paul Darling, who's currently our second place Miata, has had 2 pit stops with 28.7 seconds total. Most of our Miatas are somewhere in that as low as 26 seconds, as high as 40 seconds. Like Noel Leslie's had 3 pit stops, but that's probably not all fuel and tires. Noel probably might have hit a wall or had an incident, and basically they tow you into the pits and you get your car fixed. Impressively, when we look at our fastest lap times, you know, in the Miatas, it really is about 121.2 with Carter Whedon to a 122.2 with Noel. So when you look at fastest lap times, these Miatas are no more than a second apart. We look at current times, Noel's pulling about a 122.0, which is a very good time, very respectable time. A lot of the people in the middle of the pack are 124, 126. It's not until you get back up to Kenneth Hoozle, who's currently our fourth place Miata, fifth place Miata, who's pulling was pulling a 122, just pulled a 130 on that last lap. Not to dime you out, Kenneth, but just saying. We have Sam Scott at 122.4, Jeff Jacobs at 121.9, right on the tail of Paul at a 121.8, and then Carter out in front. I don't really think Carter's in much danger here, getting passed by Eric Jones, but Carter looks like he's got, at this point, a pretty well secured lead as long as he can sort of keep his car on track and not make any major mistakes. Eric passing Forrest, I don't quite know when that happened, but it happened. Sort of the difficult part when watching multiple classes, you know, we're trying to move around and give you a perspective on the different classes of racing, and sometimes you miss things. So Eric obviously catching up and passing Forrest. Still, though, about 21 seconds behind the leader. Forrest 28 seconds behind the leader. So Michael Monahan pretty secure in his lead again, as long as he doesn't make any major mistakes. 10-second difference on that last lap between Eric Jones and Forrest Landry. Eric ran a 120, Forrest a 130. So it's entirely possible Forrest had some sort of problem or spun out, or I mean, 130 is not enough to, you know, he did a 360, but he might have gotten hung up somewhere somehow. Generally, if somebody spins out and stops, you're looking at a 15 to 20 second difference. We do appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We hope you're having fun. I mean, racing cars is always fun, whether it's virtual or real. This obviously a lot cheaper way to race cars. Not that I'm promoting iRacing over real racing, but if you want to kind of see what it's like, this is the closest simulation you're going to get to road racing on the planet. I mean, this is the most accurate recreation of it that you can get in a virtual environment. This is our Miata leader, Carter. Take a look at some of the folks we haven't spent too much time on. Ray Hagan. Trying to see what that decal is. Might just be a Mazda decal. Oh, it's definitely, I don't think so. It's something. Alan Claffey, number 39. Looks like he's got a little dirt on the fenders. Yeah, looks like he's done some agricultural driving, picked up some mud. That's alright, it happens. We've all done it. Nobody at the front of the pack hasn't spent time cutting grass. It happens. CB Bronlich. Really want to figure out what this Eat Sleep JDM. Yeah, this is quite a decorated car. It's got everything. It's got like a Coca-Cola soccer ball on it, and there's Stewie Griffin. South Park. There's just a lot of stuff plastered all over this car. I think that's the Grand Theft Auto emblem in the lower right. So, interesting car to look at. Kenneth Hoozle and the Valvoline car. You know, maybe that's not mud. Who was I talking about? Ray Hagan's car? Mark Wood? Maybe that's not mud on his car. Maybe that's just rubber from the other cars. As the tires heat up, and these tires are very soft, the concrete will literally peel the rubber off them. Sometimes that ends up on the front of your car. Forrest Landry now in second place. Eric Jones way back, 50 seconds behind our leader. Forrest is 26 seconds. So something must have happened with Eric. His last lap was a 1:47.2, so entirely possible Eric spun out. We didn't see it. We're finishing our race now. Michael Monahan is done. And it looks like second place is going to be Forrest, followed by Eric. Carter Whedon is our first place Miata. And then we've got Dave Fitzgerald. Well, James Saffel coming in first in the Volkswagens with Dave right on his tail. And there they go, across the line. Much closer race there than we were seeing most of the race, but it's good to see those guys caught up to each other and made it a race. So again, Michael Monahan is your race leader and winner. Also first place in the Ford Series, followed by Carter Whedon, first place in the Miata Series. Paul Darling second, Jeff Jacobs third, and you had James Saffel, who came in first in our Volkswagen Series, with Dave Fitzgerald in second, and Louis Alessi in third, right? Louis Alessi was our other Volkswagen. So you can see here as we look at the results, the average speed is that speed over on the right. You see these Mustangs moving about 91 miles an hour. The Miata's not that far behind at 88 miles an hour. Very quick cars, deceptively fast, especially on this type of track. You would think a Mustang would have an average speed higher than just 3 miles an hour or more than a Miata, but these Miatas are, it's almost like they were built for this track. So they do quite well. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. WDCR SCCA.org is our website. Check it out. virtualmars.com. Go see our schedule. Go see how to sign up for races. Go check out when our next race will be next week. Please check that stuff out. I hope everybody has a good evening. If you want to leave us a comment, please do. Like us, Facebook, YouTube. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I hope you had fun. Everybody have a good night.